Okay. We are ready to get started. I'll go through some slides, and then if we need to go back and refer to them or refer to the application form and that sort of thing, I've got it all available so we can talk through things after the presentation. So the mission of CDBG is to promote the development of viable urban communities by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanded economic opportunities, principally for persons of low and moderate incomes. So that is our focus for this grant. This year we will be receiving $712,899 for the year 2023 to 2024. So the fiscal year starts in October and ends in September. So we will be receiving that amount as long as we submit an action plan that already contains the projects that are approved for that money. And so that's what we are doing through this application process is looking at the slate of projects that's proposed. Then staff puts together a recommendation, and then we take it to city council, and they make the final decision in August of which applications will be funded. And we send that to HUD, and then we should be hopefully ready to go by October with funding in place. Of that $712,000, we have some restrictions. 70% must benefit people with low to moderate incomes, and that's about $500,000. The city of San Marcos really emphasizes this, and so we typically require that basically 100% of the funding that is spent on projects benefit low to moderate income people. Also, no more than 15% can be used for public services like social service programs. So our total for that is $106,900, and that's the maximum that we can allocate to public services projects. We will also allocate the maximum 20% for administration. That's what covers the staff cost, and that'll be $142,500 out of that 712. So as you probably know, you can download the application from this website, this web page. You can also, if you had to search on the website, you could look up CDBG action plans and you would get to it. Applications are open now, and they have to be submitted by Monday, May 8th at 5 p.m. I'll go over the timeline really quickly, and also, of course, how to submit the application. So once the applications are submitted on the 8th, right after that, staff starts reviewing for completeness, and we'll contact you if we're missing anything. It may be the case that we ask for presentations to be done about the applications before the staff committee that's going to be reviewing them. I think it's unlikely. Usually the applications are pretty clear, and we can go from what we have on the paper. On May 18th, the staff committee will come together and create the recommendation for city council. And that staff committee is composed of staff from sort of the community initiatives or CDBG department, from the financial end of that department, and also from community enhancement and the city manager's office. And so that staff committee will create the recommendation, and we'll take it to city council on June 20th. There will be a public hearing. I will present our recommendations. Then there will be a public hearing, and the city council can discuss it to the extent they want to, but they won't be making a decision on that day because we have to have a 30-day public comment period after that. So then August 1st is when the city council will make the final decision on allocating the funding. How do you submit your application? By May 8th at 5 o'clock, submit it to cdbg@sanmarcostx.gov. We just need one signed application electronically. It doesn't all have to be one neat little PDF document. You can submit, there are many documents that you have to submit with it. Those can come in as separate documents if they need to. Just do what's easiest for you, but we do ask that it be submitted electronically to this email address. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. Here's my email address, dgriffith@sanmarcostx.gov. And then my phone number, 512-393-8147. And this presentation has already been posted to the website, so you can scroll back through and get all this information later as well. So a few important notes. One, agency can submit separate applications for distinct projects or programs. That is just fine. Be sure that along with the application form, where you fill out certain parts of the application form, you also submit the items that are listed on the supplemental item checklist on page 8 and the items listed under organization information on page 17. It is kind of a long list. Let us know if you have questions about it, but those are all mandatory if you have them in existence for your organization. And one thing I just like to emphasize is that when you're filling out the application and answering the questions that are in the application, those are really important for the committee to use in evaluating your application. And so please, provide compelling descriptions. Be sure and let us know how it's going to be measured and what impact it will have on San Marcos or on the specific beneficiaries that you're directing it to, and so forth. So just, really use that space to sell your program. So just a little background, as you probably know, the city is the pass-through agency for the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. So this is federal funds. That's why we have so many requirements in the application. Applications are for projects or programs that are managed by the applicant. Projects or programs should be started within 12 months of receiving a notice to proceed. So like once your application is approved through city council, then we have to get it approved by HUD, then we sign a contract, then we issue a notice to proceed. After that point, it should be started within 12 months, preferably. It doesn't have to be, but that's our preference because we do try to keep this money flowing into the community. Your organization, as I mentioned, will be signing an agreement with the city, and that'll have the timeline that you put together for the project in it, and then some performance requirements. There are 2 different application forms. They're just slightly different, but if you are submitting a program that is a social service or a public service, then you'll need to use the public services application form. If you're submitting something that involves construction or rehabilitation of homes, construction of infrastructure for the city, etc., then you'll need to use the project application. So then, just the sort of the income range that we're aiming at, especially if you are running a public services program, what we'll be looking for is service to people who have incomes lower than 80% of the area median income. And this is posted on our website. If you look up current HUD income limits, you'll find it. But I wanted to give you an idea, like for a 4-person family, the total income of all the adults in the family has to be less than or equal to $88,250. So that's what we mean by 80% of the area median income for our specific area. So what agencies are eligible? Here's who can submit an application: a public or private nonprofit agency, the Public Housing Authority, a City of San Marcos department, and any other governmental entity. Here are some specific requirements for all the projects and programs. Each project or program must meet a national objective. The one that is most frequent is benefiting low to moderate income individuals or families. So for example, if you're putting in an application, like if you're a city department and you're putting in an application for a parks project, the way we look at that is the neighborhood that benefits from the parks project has to be low to moderate income. And we can pull the information from the census to see if that's the case. If you're serving a specific population, then we are asking, how do you verify that they are low to moderate income? It could be that they just simply sign an affidavit that says what their income is, or that sort of thing. So if you have questions about that, just don't hesitate to ask. Other national objectives that are possible are eliminating slum or blight. So if you have a specific project where you want to, for example, take down houses that are blighting the community, they're vacant, they're destroyed, and so forth, that would be a project that can be funded through CDBG. One that's not used very often is urgent need. That's really for disaster recovery. Like if in the north, if there's a huge snowstorm and they have got to get the emergency routes clear and they run out of money as a city, they could use CDBG. So that's just like an instance of when it would be urgent need. So our main focus is benefiting low to moderate income individuals or families. A preference also is that you respond to a priority need in the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan. So we are looking for projects and programs that help provide affordable housing. We specifically named public services just sort of in general as a priority, and then also public facilities. So those will get a little bit higher score if you meet one of those priorities in the consolidated plan. If you're wondering if your project is going to be eligible, I included some URLs here that take you to resource documents with CDBG to find out if your activity is eligible. But if you have questions about that, you can also contact me. Okay, other requirements for projects and programs. We do have some new city council requirements. You may recognize these from the Human Services Grant. We were asked to make as many of the new requirements for those grants also apply to CDBG. And so new this year, we cannot use, or we will not plan to use funding to pay for more than 20% of a full-time position. You can fund a part-time position fully with CDBG funding if we have the proper documentation on time spent and that kind of thing. Also, the agency must have been in existence for 2 years. It could be the case that you've been serving a different community for 2 years and now you want to have a program in San Marcos. That would be okay because that means your agency has been around for 2 years. But these funds do have to serve San Marcos, of course, and we are looking for agencies that are not starting from scratch, brand new. You can get CDBG and Human Services grant funding. You can even get it for the same program. We'll just want you to be sure that we can tell when you submit your documentation for payment reimbursement that we have a clear picture that we're not double spending. Like our money isn't going for the exact same thing. So that's kind of common sense, but since it's part of the requirements, I just wanted to bring it up that yes, you can receive those sources of funding for the same project. We'll just have to differentiate what we're paying for. Also, I wanted to bring up just a few more details on the low to moderate income. So if your program is a public service or a social service and you're serving people, at least 51% of the beneficiaries must earn less than 80% of the area median income. And so we will be looking at your application to see how you're going to verify that. We prefer to have an even higher percentage of the beneficiaries earning less than the area median income because we're targeting our funding toward those people. In some cases, some classes or categories of people are presumed to be eligible for CDBG funds. So if you are serving people who have been abused, either children or adults, for example, or there are some other categories, then they are presumed to qualify for CDBG funding and you don't have to document their income. I already brought up the area benefit. So this is just main issue where this would come up is if it's a city department. So for example, putting something in the ground. So a project like that has to benefit a primarily residential area in which at least 51% of the residents are low to moderate income. So the thing about San Marcos is most neighborhoods qualify. And so just once again, if you have questions, let me know. If anyone wants to submit an economic development project, I do want to bring up that the focus is really on providing jobs for people who are low to moderate income right now. And so we always have to refer back to how many jobs are either created or maintained through the project. Okay, so let's go over briefly how the applications are evaluated. So the staff committee uses your answers to the questions that are in the application, as well as the other information that you submit to evaluate and score the application. So here's the details, and this evaluation criteria was included in the information that was posted to the website, and then also what was sent out by email to a contact list that we had. So you'll need to be proving up or documenting the need for your program or your project. A maximum of 15 points is given for this item. And you'll notice that we now have a question E on the application form that specifically asks you to describe the need and the justification for this activity. Okay, next one is the justification for the program, and this has a couple of specific parts. One is this is where we put in the points for the consolidated plan priority. If your project or program falls into one of these categories, we'll give you 5 points. And then the other 10 points are if it meets a city council strategic initiative. And I will double check to make sure everything's been posted to the website, but the, let me write myself a note, hang on a second. Okay. I'll make sure this document is posted to the website, but it is sort of an attachment to the application. I went ahead and attached the whole city council strategic plan because there are so many different details that a program could meet one of the initiatives within it. Like last year, we had just listed out 5 basic points from the city council strategic initiatives. This year, I just loaded up the whole strategic plan. You can scan through it yourself and see if you believe your project meets one of the initiatives in there, and then we're asking you to put that information in your answer to question F on the application form. Okay, impact and cost effectiveness will get you a maximum of 20 points. This is sort of a judgment call on the part of the committee. We'll be looking at the amount of overhead compared to program costs, the impact we think the program will have compared to the cost. Also use of available resources, like do you have additional funding? Do you have volunteers that help your program sort of stretch that dollar, that kind of thing? And that's also, you'll have an opportunity to talk about some of this in question G on the application form. Okay, implementation, maximum of 20 points again here. This is trying to discern, does this agency seem to be ready to launch the program? Do you have all your resources ready? Have you identified your major tasks? Are you able to describe your program pretty well so that we can tell what you're planning to do? And do you have objectives that are focused on results, like measurable outcomes? And so we'll be looking at those. Questions A, B, C, and D are used to evaluate this implementation readiness. Okay, we also have past performance or letters of reference. So we wanted to give some points to, for example, agencies or programs that have a really good track record with the city, strong management, fulfilling the objectives of the funding, getting the funding spent and out to the beneficiaries, that sort of thing, could get a maximum of 10 points. We also want to respect that some programs may be new to the city of San Marcos. And so if that's the case for you, we ask that you submit 3 letters of reference, preferably from local sources that talk about, why your program is a good fit for San Marcos and how well you've managed it elsewhere, or how they think it will be managed in the future. And this is also addressed in question H on the application form. And we still keep going. Okay, we have city council priorities, a maximum of 20 points. This is a little bit more rote, like we'll assign 5 points for each one of these things. This question is in response, or this evaluation point is viewed in response to question E. And then also we ask you some specific questions that are new on the application form on page 13. So you will have the opportunity to tell us specifically whether or not you qualify for these points. Okay, so that was the evaluation criteria on which the score is based that will rank your application and start it into the discussion of whether or not it should be funded. In addition, we do a risk assessment that has more to do with sort of the agency's experience or the longevity of the program, whether it seems to be well supported, whether it's a complex program or not. Some CDBG programs get pretty complex because of all the regulations that go with them. So if it's a complex program, it would have a higher risk score. If the agency lacks experience or they're experimenting with something new, that would be a higher risk score, that kind of thing. So this is what we look at. We look at all these things and then assign a single risk score to each application. And generally that's just sort of viewed as an additional piece of information. What we have found is that we don't usually receive risky applications. But some, like if the program's new or if it's really complex, it might have a little bit higher score. Okay, and then what? So council decides which programs will be funded on August 1st. And then we submit the action plan to HUD and HUD approves it. After that, we'll work with you to sign a contract with the city. You'll sign it and we'll sign it. An environmental review has to be completed by city staff. Even if you have a public services project, I know it sounds really weird, like why would you do an environmental review for a public services program? But we have to at least fill out a form that says that because this is a public services project, no environmental review is required. So there's always a form that we have to do for environmental review, no matter what the project is. It's definitely more complex if you're actually putting something on the ground, excuse me. Once you have your contract signed and the environmental review is completed, we'll give you a notice to proceed and you can start spending money at that point. We will ask you to do quarterly reports, documenting sort of what impact you're having. We have a little paragraph where you describe what's going on, and then a table where you're tracking the beneficiaries as much as it applies to your program. Not every program tracks their beneficiaries. Payments are reimbursements. You do have to submit some real documentation for those, like not only an invoice, but for example, but you also have to show that you paid the invoice. So that level of documentation. And the timeline for your project is actually set by the contract that you enter into with the city. And so we'll be looking to you to describe how much time you need to complete your project or program. Generally in the past, they've been 1 year because this funding is annual, but it could be more than 12 months if you needed that. Okay, so I'll open the floor for questions. And I'm gonna get out of this full screen view so that I can see if you are raising your hand. And here is my contact information as well. So I will open the floor to get. You're seeing my Zoom skills now. 1 second. I need to get back to where I can see if you raise your hand, which I'm not comfortable seeing. Oh, I need to stop sharing my screen. Okay, we can always go back to the information, but what I'm looking for now is whether anybody has their hand raised. And if you have questions, just click the raise your hand button. It should be at maybe the bottom of your screen. And then I'll enable you to be able to speak. I'm not really seeing any questions, but I'll give you all a few minutes to gather your thoughts. And after that, we'll conclude. And then you are always welcome to contact me with any questions that you have. And I would say definitely if you feel like you're having to start down a path of gathering a lot of information, or you're concerned in some way about your application, contact me, and I'll be happy to help, like, make sure you understand what's really needed. Okay, well, I think with that, I'll go ahead and conclude the presentation and this webinar. We'll post the recording on the internet. We should have it up probably by tomorrow, so that you can, let other people know that it's available if needed. So thank you all for attending, and I appreciate your participation, and we'll look forward to receiving your application.